All right, today we're going to tear up the old maps we used to understand people. Forget about money, forget about status for a second. We're diving into a really fascinating and kind of provocative new way to look at ourselves and everyone we know. And it's all built on one single powerful idea.
So, let's just start with this huge question. What is it that really separates us from each other? Deep down. It's a question philosophers have been wrestling with forever, and it's basically the starting pistol for this whole explainer.
The world usually gives us some pretty standard answers, right? It's about money, status, power. But the author behind this whole framework says, nope, that's just scratching the surface. The real difference is, the things that truly define who we are, they're all internal. It comes down to our spirituality and our wisdom.
And this whole idea is laid out like a journey. You could almost call it a ladder of consciousness that we can climb. It starts with what's called the muddled person, or Hun Ren, which kind of translates to a muddy or chaotic state of being. And it goes all the way up to the transcendent person, or Xian Ren, which is like an enlightened, immortal being. So think of this as our roadmap for the next few minutes. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to start at the very bottom of the ladder with the folks who are living pretty much entirely by instinct and desire.
So, first up, we have the muddled person. The author basically defines this person as someone who's operating almost completely on raw instinct. Their life isn't really a planned-out path, it's more like a chain reaction to whatever happens to be right in front of them.
And this right here, it paints such a vivid picture. This isn't necessarily a bad person, but they're a chaotic one. You can see right here, their actions always come before their thoughts. Instinct always beats reason, and their emotions are just all over the place. They're incredibly arrogant when they win and totally crushed when they lose. And yeah, while they can be fiercely, intensely loyal to their friends, there's often this missing sense of a bigger responsibility to society or even to their own future.
But check this out. This quote points to something really interesting. There's a kind of innocence to them, a transparency. Because they live so much on the surface, just reacting to things, what you see is literally what you get. There are no secret plots or hidden agendas, just pure, unfiltered impulse.
Okay, let's take a step up the ladder and see what happens next. We're moving from raw instinct to a much more calculated kind of desire. This is the worldly person, or Su Run, which suggests someone focused on, well, worldly things. And this is a huge change in what drives a person.
So unlike the muddled person, the worldly person definitely has goals. But those goals are all about them. Their entire universe revolves around what they can get: money, fame, status. They're strategic. They'll use flattery, they'll exploit loopholes. Principles, even people and relationships, all of that can be thrown aside if it gets in the way of what they want.
Wow, this quote is, well, it's pretty brutal, but it gets right to the heart of the worldly person. For them, self-interest isn't just the main thing. It's the only thing. It's a priority so absolute that it can literally erase the people who should be closest to them. And now we get to the very middle of our map. And this is a category that, let's be honest, a lot of us might find painfully familiar. This is the struggle of the ordinary person.
The ordinary person, or Fan Ren, which literally means immortal, is someone who lives by emotion, by connection. Their entire world is defined by their relationships to their family, their friends, their community. This is where the human heart, with all of its messy complexity, really comes into play.
And this is exactly why the author says this is the most painful level to be on. See, the ordinary person has ideals. They have ambitions, a sense of right and wrong, but they feel constantly caught in a struggle. They're trying to navigate a world that's filled with muddled and worldly people, all while battling their own internal desires and trying to live up to what society expects of them. It's a life that's often just full of regret and a feeling of being totally stuck.
This old saying just captures their situation perfectly. It basically means you're out there in the world and you feel like you're not in control of your own life. It's that feeling of being a tiny boat on a huge, raging river. You're caught up in things, in obligations that feel so much bigger than you. You're being pulled in a million different directions all at once.
But, and this is so important, that struggle, all that pain, it's not a dead end. In fact, it's the very thing that can forge something better. This is the real turning point on our map. So, what is on the other side of all that struggle? Let's start climbing into the more aspirational ways of being.
So here we meet the worthy person, or Xianren, which means something like a virtuous or wise person. This is a huge leap forward. We're moving from living by emotion to living by reason and intellect. This is somebody who has really started to master the art of living.
The worthy person is clear-headed. They're in the driver's seat. They're going after these noble goals like health and freedom. And they've pretty much broken free from that desperate need for fame and money that drives the worldly person crazy. They are, like the author says, the pillars of a civilized society. But they're still human. They're still bound by the real world, by time and space.
I love this description. They are gems. They're not valuable because of what they have, but because of who they are. Their value is baked right in. It's a result of their character, their mind, their whole rational way of moving through the world.
And that brings us to the very top, the summit of the mountain, the transcendent person. This is someone who's moved beyond even reason and intellect and into a realm of pure spirit. They're operating on a level of awareness that's honestly hard for most of us to even imagine. I mean, just look at this. This describes a state of total and complete freedom. They're free not just from wanting stuff, but from the basic rules of time and space. They're not chasing power or fame. Instead, they find this incredible joy in the simplest things you can imagine, watching ants, listening to birds. Their life is simple, quiet, and just deeply content. What an incredible way to see the world. For the transcendent person, all the things we struggle with, all the drama, it's not a burden anymore. It's just a fun game. And even death, the thing most people are terrified of, isn't scary. It's just a beautiful, natural next step on some grand, infinite adventure. Okay, now for what might be the most brilliant part of this entire framework. The author actually predicts how each of these 5 types of people would react to hearing this very explainer.
This is just so clever. So the muddled person gets angry, a pure gut reaction. The worldly person feels like their playbook has been exposed, so they hate the author. The ordinary person looks up the ladder and feels sad and maybe a little jealous. It's the worthy person who feels happy, like they found someone who finally gets it. And the transcendent person? They just laugh. From their perspective, trying to put people in boxes like this is a pretty funny and silly thing to do. But here's the real takeaway from that. It doesn't really matter what your first reaction is, if it's anger or envy or joy. Just hearing about this map gives you a new kind of awareness. It gives you a language, a framework for thinking about where you are right now. And that, of course, brings us to the final, most important question. Because seeing this map isn't just about learning something new. It's really an invitation. It's asking you to find yourself on this map. Not to judge yourself, but just to see with clarity. And then it asks the most powerful question of all. Where do you want to go from here? Thanks for coming along on this little journey with me.